Legendary Passages, Episode 110, Plutarch's Life of Theseus, Section 17, The Black Sail. Previously, the time had come for the third tribute of Athenian youths to be sent to Crete, with no hope of return. In this passage are many different versions of their adventures, not one ending happily ever after. First of all, Theseus promised his father that if they returned safe and sound, he would replace the ship's black sail with a white one. After prayers and sacrifices to Aphrodite by the seashore, they set sail for Crete. Theseus competed in games against Minos' general named Taurus, and then it was love at first sight for Princess Ariadne. She gave Theseus the thread to find his way out of the labyrinth, and after crippling the Cretan fleet, they escaped on the tribute ship. After the ship made landfall on the island of Naxos, it departed again without Princess Ariadne. Some say she married the god Dionysus, others that Theseus left her for another woman, and she died of grief. The worst story was that she went ashore while sick, and the tides pushed the ship out to sea. But by the time Theseus returned to her side, she had died in childbirth. Nevertheless, when they sailed back home to Athens, Theseus had forgotten to take down the black sail. So then King Aegeus, thinking his son and heir dead at the hands of the Minotaur, leapt off the cliff into the sea that bears his name. The Black Sail, a legendary passage from Bernadette Perrin translating Lucius Mestrius Plutarchus, Life of Theseus, Sections 17 to 22. On the two former occasions, then, no hope of safety was entertained, and therefore they sent the ship with the black sail, convinced that their youth were going to certain destruction. But now Theseus encouraged his father and loudly boasted that he would master the Minotaur, so that he gave the pilot another sail, a white one, ordering him, if he returned with Theseus safe, to hoist the white sail, but otherwise to sail with the black one, and so indicate the affliction. Simonides, however, says that the sail given by Aegeus was not white, but a scarlet sail dyed with the tender flower of luxuriant homilk, and that he made this a token of their safety. Moreover, the pilot of the ship was Phereclus, son of Amorsius, as Simonides says. But Philochorus says that Theseus got from Scyrus of Salamis Nausithous for his pilot, and Phaeax for his lookout man, the Athenians at that time not yet being addicted to the sea, and that Scyrus did him this favor because one of the chosen youths, Menesthes, was his daughter's son. And there is evidence for this in the memorial chapels for Nausithous and Phaeax, which Theseus built at Phalerum near the temple of Scyrus, and they say that the festival of Cybernesia, or Pilot's Festival, is celebrated in their honor. When the lot was cast, Theseus took those upon whom it fell from the Prytaneum, and went to the Delphinium, where he dedicated to Apollo in their behalf his suppliant's badge. This was a bow from the sacred olive tree, wreathed in white wool. Having made his vows and prayers, he went down to the sea on the 6th day of the month Manichian, on which day, even now, the Athenians still send their maidens to the Delphinium to propitiate the god. It is reported that the god at Delphi commanded him in an oracle to make Aphrodite his guide, and invite her to attend him on his journey, and that as he sacrificed the usual she-goat to her by the seashore, it became a he-goat, tragos, all at once, for which reason the goddess has the surname Epitragia. When he reached Crete on his voyage, most historians and poets tell us that he got from Ariadne, who had fallen in love with him, the famous thread, and that, having been instructed by her how to make his way through the intricacies of the labyrinth, he slew the Minotaur and sailed off with Ariadne and the youths. And Pherecydes says that Theseus also staved in the bottoms of the Cretan ships, thus depriving them of their power to pursue. And Demon says also that Taurus, the general of Minos, was killed in a naval battle in the harbor as Theseus was sailing out. But as Philochorus tells the story, Minos was holding the funeral games, and Taurus was expected to conquer all his competitors in them, as he had done before, and was grudged his success. For his disposition made his power hateful, and he was accused of too great intimacy with Pasiphae. Therefore, when Theseus asked the privilege of entering the lists, it was granted him by Minos. And since it was the custom in Crete for women to view the games, Ariadne was present, and was smitten with the appearance of Theseus, as well as filled with admiration for his athletic prowess, when he conquered all his opponents. Minos also was delighted with him, especially because he conquered Taurus in wrestling and disgraced him, and therefore gave back the ewes to Theseus, besides remitting its tribute to the city. Clydemus, however, gives a rather peculiar and ambitious account of these matters, beginning a great way back. There was, he says, a general Hellenic decree that no trireme should sail from any port with a larger crew than 5 men, and the only exception was Jason, commander of the Argo, who sailed about scouring the seas of pirates. Now when Daedalus fled from Crete in a merchant vessel to Athens, Minos, contrary to the decrees, pursued him with his ships of war, and was driven from his course by a tempest to Sicily, where he ended his life. And when Deucalion, his son, who was on hostile terms with the Athenians, sent to them a demand that they deliver up Daedalus to him, and threatened, if they refused, to put to death the youth whom Minos had received from them as hostages, Theseus made him a gentle reply, declining to surrender Daedalus, who was his kinsman and cousin, being the son of Merope, the daughter of Erechtheus. But privately he set himself to building a fleet, part of it at home in the township of Thymotate, far from the public road, and part of it under the direction of Pythius and Trozen, wishing his purpose to remain concealed. When his ships were ready, he set sail, taking Daedalus and exiles from Crete as guides, and since none of the Cretans knew of his design, but thought the approaching ships to be friendly, Theseus made himself master of the harbor, disembarked his men, and got to Knossos before his enemies were aware of his approach. Then, joining the battle with them at the gates of the Labyrinth, he slew Deucalion and his bodyguard. And since Ariadne was now at the head of affairs, he made a truce with her, received back the youthful hostages, and established friendship between the Athenians and the Cretans, who took oath never to begin hostilities. There are many other stories about these matters, and also about Ariadne, but they do not agree at all. Some say that she hung herself because she was abandoned by Theseus, others that she was conveyed to Naxos by sailors and lived there with Onaris, the priest of Dionysus, and that she was abandoned by Theseus because he loved another woman. Dreadful indeed was his passion for Aigle, child of Panopeus. This verse Pisistratus expunged from the poems of Hesiod, according to Harius the Megarian, just as, on the other hand, he inserted into the Inferno of Homer the verse, Theseus, Pirithous, illustrious children of heaven, all to gratify the Athenians. Moreover, some say that Ariadne actually had sons by Theseus, Oenopion and Staphylos, and among these is Ion of Chios, who says of his own native city, "This, once, Theseus' son founded, Oenopion." Now the most auspicious of these legendary tales are in the mouths of all men, as I may say. But a very peculiar account of these matters is published by Paeon the Amalthusian. He says that Theseus, driven out of his course by a storm to Cyprus, and having with him Ariadne, who was big with child, and in sore sickness and distress from the tossing of the sea, set her on the shore alone, but that he himself, while trying to succor the ship, was borne out to sea again. The women of the island, accordingly, took Ariadne into their care, and tried to comfort her in the discouragement caused by her loneliness, brought her forged letters purporting to have been written to her by Theseus, ministered to her aid during the pangs of travail, and gave her burial when she died before her child was born. Paeon says further that Theseus came back and was greatly afflicted, and left a sum of money with the people of the island, enjoining them to sacrifice to Ariadne, and caused 2 little statuettes to be set up in her honor, one of silver and one of bronze. He says also that at the sacrifice in her honor, on the 2nd day of the month Gorpieus, one of their young men lies down and imitates the cries and gestures of women in travail, and that they call the grove in which they show her tomb the grove of Ariadne Aphrodite. Some of the Naxians have a story of their own, that there were 2 Minoses and 2 Ariadnes, one of whom, they say, was married to Dionysus in Naxos, and bore him Staphylos and his brother, and the other, of a later time, having been carried off by Theseus, and then abandoned by him, came to Naxos, accompanied by a nurse named Corsine, whose tomb they show, and that this Ariadne also died there, and has honor paid her unlike those of the former, for the festival of the first Ariadne is celebrated with mirth and revels, but the sacrifices performed in honor of the second are attended with sorrow and mourning. On his voyage home from Crete, Theseus put in at Delos, and, having sacrificed to the god, and dedicated in his temple the image of Aphrodite which he had received from Ariadne, he danced with his youths a dance which they say is still performed by the Delians, being an imitation of the circling passages in the Labyrinth, and consisting of certain rhythmic involutions and evolutions. This kind of dance, as Dicarchus tells us, is called by the Delians the crane, and Theseus danced it round the altar called Cretan, which is constructed of horns, kerata, taken entirely from the left side of the head. They say that he also instituted athletic contests in Delos, and that the custom was then begun by him of giving a palm to the victors. It is said, moreover, that as they drew nigh the coast of Attica, Theseus himself forgot, and his pilot forgot, such was their joy and exultation, to hoist the sail which was to have been the token of their safety to Aegeus, who therefore, in despair, threw himself down from the rock and was dashed to pieces. But Theseus, putting in to shore, sacrificed in person the sacrifices which he had vowed to the gods at Phalerum when he set sail, and then dispatched a herald to the city to announce his safe return. This passage continues with Theseus becoming High King of Athens, but in our next episode we read Ariadne's letter to her forsaken love.